like
bring people in the curtain. We're peering behind the curtain here right now in the late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, joined by genuinely one of our favorite people in this town. He is an icon of LA radio and AM 570. Oh no, this is why people show up. They get to hear stuff like this.
Yeah,
he's the voice of the Chargers. He is. You see him on the NFL Network, and most importantly, though, Matt Money Smith. His impression of Joel Myers remains my single favorite niche impression that I have ever heard, and it is absolutely delightful, and I still love it. Former Lakers broadcaster Joel Myers, now in New Orleans.
Have you guys wanted anything? Have you wanted anything since I was cursed and moved down to the Big Easy? No, you have. Oh wait, you have. That's right, you have. Yeah, Joel. Well, you know what? If he's watching this right now, it's just par for the course. Not a fan of mine at all. Before I get hit by a car next time I'm crossing the street.
Oh my God!
Probably what he would say if you asked him.
Well, that brings back so many happy memories.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we used to do, right? We'd be suffering together. It'd be like February. They're playing 9-win Memphis team. It's 11:30 at night, and how do you pass the time? You make fun of the guy that's being a jerk to everybody. So,
to your credit, though, Matt, because there's a difference between you at that time and some other broadcasters, either in LA or national, whatever. You would do this while continually finding yourself in a room with Joel Myers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's similar to how. Brian, I'm not going to say that Brian and I were the first people at 710 that would do Mitch Kupchak impressions, but I think we were the first people that would do them nonstop.
Right.
And then it started turning into something that other people would do. And while Mitch was always extremely nice to us both, very personal, whatever.
Oh, I'm a very nice guy.
Yeah, I heard it from a lot of people that he was not a fan.
Yeah. And we never did it to him, next to him in the media dining room.
The funny thing is, Joel still does. I still come across him from time to time because he does and I think I'm pretty sure he still does do the television games for Saints preseason. And Sean Payton and Anthony Lynn are very close, and so we would get those joint practices every year between the Chargers and the Saints. So I would see Joel every year, and I would make a point to just time things up just right. So I would run into him in the broadcast hallway. Joel, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy? Everything good? Fine. How's New Orleans? Good. Man, it's great to see it. It's good to see you. Yes.
I don't believe you, sir.
Yes, we've stumbled out the gate. My apologies. My grave apologies.
I brought it up. Are you kidding?
No, we were hoping that you could slip right back into it seamlessly, and you did not let us down.
Yeah, it's that is. Oh, geez, look at this already. So I don't know how it happened, but one of my favorite things is, and I typically am listening, when I'm in the car to music, or I love podcasts or books on tape, but I found myself becoming obsessed with Chris the Mad Dog Russo. And he's obviously, the guy's a legend, right? I mean, it's Mike and the Mad Dog. So, I'm not trying to take anything away. He does a great job. I get why people listen to the show, but I love just his the places where he presents, where he chooses to accent words, the way he did. Like here, this is what got me into Mad Dog. Do you guys listen to him at all? Do you know?
Yeah, enough to get what you're talking about.
Okay, so here we go. I'm Mad Dog, and you guys, I'll go. Andy, you've just called in. All right, here we go. Let's get to the phones. Andy, it's on the phone. Andy, call it in from Los Angeles. And Andy, what do you got there? What do you got? You got a point you want to make? He's going to bring us the point now, Andy. What are we going to say? Let's go. What do you got?
I was just wondering if you think the Lakers can repeat again.
Do I think the Lakers can repeat again? Do I think the Lakers can repeat? Of course it is. Of course the Lakers can repeat it. But every time, and if he has Phil Simms on for an hour every week. And for that entire hour, All right, Phil, let's talk about the Rams. Phil, what do you got for me on Brandon Staley, defensive coordinator? I want to hear what your opinion is on him. What do you got? And then he'll give you the answer. All right, Phil, let's move it over to the other sideline and the Packers and what Matt LaFleur has done. What do you got on Matt? What do you think of him? What do you got? I want to get your opinion on. What do you got? Every question ends with, I want to get your opinion on that. What do you got? It kills me. And his commitment to mispronouncing words, and this should not be my comedy routine and you guys laughing uncomfortably towards it. So I'll cap it with this. But like
he was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm having a good time.
He was talking about the Nickelodeon broadcast, right? But he mispronounces so many different words and just doesn't care and commits to it. And he'll say things like, that Noah Eagle, son of Iron. Iron's a great broadcast, and that Noah's, he's a star. Yeah, probably deserves a show of his own. But there's just a little over the top on a Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon, they just didn't go, it's just that Nickelodeon.
I mean, everyone say I would get it mostly when I'd be driving home from a game or something like that back in the day when you used to drive home from a game. And there's certain guys like Jamal Crawford until this year felt to me like a guy who was just grandfathered in from like the rules of 2008 NBA. Like Jamal Crawford got to play that style of ball because everybody likes him so much, and that's what he got to do. There are certain dudes that just get to do sports radio from 2006.
Yes.
And those are the rules, and that's what they get to do.
And look, his is from 89, right? It's just calls and just engaging. Well, let's go out to White Plains and Arthur's out there. He's like, old friend, what do you got, Arthur? Let me hear what you got. I want to hear what you have to say. What do you got?
I remember one time, because Hacksaw was one of those guys too, that just was a legend in what he did. And Hacksaw could do whatever he wanted. It didn't necessarily have to make sense. It didn't have to be like a through line from A to Z. But one of the things that used to crack me up with him was how committed he was to calling out the geography of all the different callers he had in. He'd lay out all the different topics he wanted to get into. Oh, yeah. And then he'd lay out all the different cities that he wanted to hear from, all where his lines were available. I remember one time.
It should be noted, all the same line.
Yeah, exactly. Ladies line. That was it. MVP line. The ladies line.
No difference between the Bakersfield line and the Palmdale line. Same line.
There was one time, and I still don't know if he forgot where he was in the show, or maybe this was a repeat and I wasn't aware that it was a repeat. But there was one time where he set up a segment, doing the usual, these are the topics I want to get into, and I want to hear from Pacoima to Poughkeepsie to blah, 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 blah. And then the show ended. That was the end of the show. It was his final segment. And again, I don't know if it was a repeat and some engineer messed it up, or if he lost where he was. But I remember I was like, wait, the show just ended.
Well, the Hacksaw was, the show was, was a static show. It was Hacksaw's headlines, from top of the hour until about 14. And then he would just, I used to work with him, so I used to see him do it, where he would take the story from The Wire. For people who have no idea what a wire was, it was, this news reporting device where this tape would come out and the story, and he would just tear it off and he would tape it onto the paper. And then he would do all of his stories. And it was basically just whatever came through on the wire. Dateline, Detroit, new general manager for the Lions just hired. Rams fans, 818 Van Nuys, I want to hear from you. And then, and then the very next, the next segment was calls. And the next segment after that was calls. And the next segment after that was calls. Then you get to the top and it'd be Hacksaw's Out headlines again. And, it's just update, Dateline, Jacksonville, Urban Meyer hired as the head. Do I have any Buckeye fans? I want to hear what you think, and that's just what he did. Look, we used to crank call him when I was younger. And we would use each other's names. Where my buddy Zeke used to crank call my buddy Schottner and stuff. And we would use, as ballers here is right, Chula Vista. We would call in and what we would do, Hacksaw Hacksaw couldn't not know about something. Like Hacksaw had the answer. So we would just make up names. And we'd be like, yeah, hey, Saw, man, love the show. You're freaking awesome. Oh, what else is new? Got a question for you, man. And like I would say, the Houston Rockets, they got a like 15th man on the bench, Andy Kamenetzky. What do you got on him? Kamenetzky, tweener. Not sure if he's going to get a lot of minutes. All right, one call leads me to the next. Yeah, it's John over in Santa Monica. Beautiful city, love the pier. What do you got, John? I was wondering, what do you think of the new guy on Penske in the IRL, Brian Kamenetzky? What do you got on him? Oh, not a lot. Low floor, high ceiling, big bus potential. Like he would never admit he didn't know something. It was great.
What's great, but it just shows how much different the world is. Like the internet ruined that. Like you can't be that guy in the all-knowing, omnipotent sports guy. It just doesn't exist anymore. And I think to all of our benefit. I mean,
and
like,
he would,
the world is a better place.
And he would also never admit that he got something wrong. Like he would, he would come on one day, and then the very next day, let's just say, it's Game 7 of the NBA final. I like the Heat. The next day, like I said yesterday, in 7. It's like, wait a minute, that's not what you said. But that's how it was back then. It's like, who the hell's going to call me out? Someone who's taping this on a cassette deck? I don't give a damn, And they would just pretend like they got everything right. All the picks from this weekend's Hacksaw's hot NFL selections. 7-0 against the number again. No, you weren't.
It did actually doesn't have a sense of humor.
No, he I'll tell you something. My buddy, those guys I was talking about, Schottner and Zeke, they got him on like back-to-back calls, and he got so upset he left the show like 3 minutes early. I'm doing this for you. If you you think it's a joke and you want to play games, let's see what you think when you don't have it. He left his show 3 minutes early because they back-to-backed them on crank calls.
You don't want to have Hacksaw Hamilton and kick around anymore.
Exactly.
So how did it evolve? I mean, we'll get off this in a second, but like, how did it evolve? Like, you guys basically, and there are other shows. Levitard, has kind of made an art form out of this, of kind of just doing whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Like, when did it evolve into something that you could do that with? Because it's a much better, for me at least, incarnation of sports radio.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Petros and I, we were talking. It's like it's our 14th year, and like we've kind of just always done. I don't think the show's changed at all. It's just kind of been the same show. I think. I guess kind of what you started to realize, or I think what people realized, is that they don't want to hear about the hot sports topic, especially an afternoon drive. I mean, their day's long. Their boss been screaming at them. They got to go home, and when they get home, they got to freaking clean the house or take the trash out of it. Just entertain them, and entertaining them is probably not giving them headlines they already know, or giving the 15th take on the James Harden trade that happened, 6 hours ago. So it's just entertain them however you see fit. That's the goal, right? It's 4 hours of just trying to entertain those people.
Well, that was actually, I remember early on when Brian and I first started doing radio and talking with you about this, and it was advice you gave that, for better or for worse, I know we both followed. It's just like
look at us now.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Thanks for all your advice, Matt. Really appreciate it.
We mostly brought you here to yell at you.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
I could have been a lawyer, Matt.
So could I.
but the idea that there is, generally speaking, not enough happening for 3 to 4 hours of just pure sports talk every single day. So don't try. Unless it's there, if it's there, obviously, if something major, you stay on it. But just go outside it at times. As long as it's something you genuinely find entertaining,
right? I think there's so many shows that now feel as though that's what they're supposed to do, and it's awkward, and it just doesn't work, and they're just better off screaming at each other about sports. Like Mad Dog, it's so great when he goes off topic, because he'll just start talking about his round of golf at his, probably $250,000 to join country club. And so there I am on a 7th, And there's a wind coming in from the left, and I was gonna go 7-iron, but then I went down to the 4, and I hit a little thin, dribbled up there, 3-putted for bogey, but it felt good. What? Okay, and he'll do that for 10 minutes, or he'll talk about, So I think even the people that have been doing it forever, that have just been doing the talk forever, that's now being coached into them. Hey, these. They want to feel like they're part of your family or they're in your inner circle. So you got to share with them some cool stories about like what's going on in your life. And I think it's tough for some people.
Well, what it is. It's got to be genuine. It's got to come from somewhere. You've worked with him, so you know what it is with Michael Thompson, for example. Andy and I loved working with Michael. Because our producers be like, get him back on time. I was like, no, I want to hear him talk about being an astronaut.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we fucking care about the pregame matchups between, like you said, a 9-win Wizards team and a 13-win Lakers team during this era? And clearly Michael didn't care because he wanted to talk about being an astronaut.
And and to Michael, like one of the great things about Michael, and I think this is also, a very important component for radio, is the willingness to not take yourself too seriously. Whereas Michael, and look, he's a Laker legend. He's the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. And whenever he would start talking about being an astronaut, I would make fun of him on the air. I'd be like, don't you know, I was going to go up into space and that's what my real calling was, but I was too tall to fit in the capsule. And he'd be like, I don't sound like that much. Oh, you don't, do you? Now you don't sound like that. I really don't sound. And he would just go with it.
There's a bit of Irish going on in your Bahamian.
Exactly. It was terrible. It was a horrible accent. But I would, it's what we would do. And Michael was so good about not caring and playing along. And I can't tell you how many times he's getting whatever. He used to steal paper towel and toilet paper. I don't think
this is a big secret, Matt.
Yeah, okay,
I think this is good.
I feel bad doing it, but man, he would bring. But it's one thing to like grab a thing of paper towel because you see it and put it in your backpack. He would bring an empty duffel bag to work, and then fill that duffel bag with the explicit intent to steal the paper towel and toilet paper and take it home. It was remarkable. What do you got there, Mike? Well, why am I not taking it home? Who's gonna use it? Well, I don't know. I think it's for the office. They got plenty.
Well, it's like the night that Andy and I were, one of those TNT games or something like that, and you look over. And Sager was filling his briefcase with the post-game beers from the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah. All the Bud Lights for the crew. Those are for the guys that were staring down, and they just would hang out there, and Sager would just pound them. And
okay, so he was giving them away. That makes me feel better.
Yes. No. That's what those beers were for. I felt bad just taking one, and I was drinking with those guys because I was doing post-game and getting out of there later than almost anybody else. Sager was just freaking basically keistering them and taking them back to the hotel.
Yeah, it's just like you can expense those. You're Craig Sager. You don't have to steal all the beer.
So good.
By the way, Michael right now, obviously, like everybody, he is rooting for the pandemic to end. But what we're seeing right now, where Michael is able to watch live basketball, but totally closed off from other people and germs and like Purell everywhere. This is Michael's version of heaven.
Yeah.
This is really his utopia.
Yeah. He look, I was doing what? I did Laker games from 05 to 10, I think was either 05 or 06 to 10. I think it was 05, 06 season to 09, 10. He was way ahead of the curve, man. He was hand sanitizer all day, all night. If he found out you were sick, you better get the hell away from him. So yes, he was well ahead of everybody on that front, and just those giant hands. And he would have that tiny little bottle of Purell, and he would, gosh, and like I'll never. One of my enduring images of Michael is I was fortunate enough, and bless he and Spiro for being just awesome dudes. They basically told their stat guy, no, we don't need you. And they let me do stats so I could sit courtside at the finals throughout every playoff. If the team wouldn't put aside a seat for me, they would basically tell their stat guy we're good. Spiro would, and he'd be like, yeah, you can just do my stats, which I wasn't great at. So it's the NBA Finals. I think it's actually game 1 of the NBA Finals, and we are on the air, second half, and Michael is eating popcorn, and his mic is off, and in radio you have like this cough button or something, or this like power, turn your mic on and off, and he would just be like,
does that all,
and the game is, and it's fine to do it in the regular season. This is game 1 of the NBA Finals, and he's just decided he's going to sit out 2 minutes of this broadcast.
Doing pregame with Michael Thompson, particularly when Michael was on the road and one of us would be in the studio, you would have to be prepared for, like, they'd have these pre-taped segments, or you'd go into whoever the coach was at the time, his pregame, and then you'd come out of it and you would fill whatever time was left before the commercial. You would have to prepare for the fact that Michael sometimes would just wander off. Like you'd have no idea where he went, if he was coming back. If he's on the road, you didn't even know if he's gone. Like if you're doing this, at least inside Staples Center, you could watch Michael physically wander to the other side of the stadium.
Exactly.
But like
when he's supposed to be on the air, Petros tells one of the great stories. The first day he was doing the show, our show, first day. He comes in and he's kind of lost and he's trying to find his way to the elevator. I think he took a wrong turn in our building, and we have a gym in our building, a fitness center.
I know this story.
And he sees Michael in there, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Michael, I'm kind of lost." And he's like, "Wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be on the air?" And he's like, and he's probably he's coming in like 2 hours before our show starts, so the Cannons has already been on for like 45 minutes. And he's like, "Oh, don't tell the guys. They think I'm still on the Laker plane. I want to get a workout in." You're supposed to be on the air, and you're just sitting on a freaking recumbent bike, reading the newspaper. "Don't tell the guys I'm down here. They think I'm still on the plane." It's remarkable.
The dedication is just there. I have an enormous amount of respect for people who are 100% invested in being themselves.
Yes.
In industries and in places and in doing public facing things and forward facing things where it's very easy for you to feel like you have to, all right, I got to bend a little bit here. Michael was a Laker. You gave the resume. He's still a guy working in media who, got out of the game, wants a job, needs to make a little money before he dies. It's like, there's a lot of time between the end of your career and he never has and never will. And I have an enormous amount of respect for people who will go through life that way.
Yeah, look, he's broke the mold. That's just it. He's one of one, and it's what makes him great. And I think there is something too about him being. Look, when you cover the NBA, you're just surrounded by freaks, right? These guys, they're giants, they're awkward, they can't hide. Michael's 6'10". He's got these gangly arms and hands, and he's always talking with his hands and gesticulating. And, it would be him, Spiro, Doug Mann, who was our stat guy, and me. Mm-hmm. And as he's telling stories, he could reach his arm all the way over through 2 people and put it on me as he's telling these stories. So I think there is also something about that he's just like a cartoon character. Like when you look at him, it's like this just, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. And it makes it even better. I think it enhances just kind of the uniqueness of his personality and how he behaves. And then he's got the accent and just the ridiculous things.
Not as strong as the accent you've created.
No, certainly.
That's
how I hear him.
We've had Michael on the show, and I closed my eyes. It was as if he was back.
Yes, exactly.
By the way, that when we last attempted to have Michael on the show, we eventually had to just give up because he couldn't figure out the Wi-Fi. And in the meantime, he's calling on his poor wife, Julie, to try to set this thing up. And you can hear her off camera just saying to leave her out of this.
Oh, that's so great.
We've actually never met his wife.
Never met her.
But we're pretty sure she hates us.
Okay, that's funny because you tortured him. Yes, Julie's awesome. She's and that's what's funny, right? It's like Michael, the family was always at the games, and I can remember, little Clay and little Mikey and little Trey's coming up to talk to us and stuff. And God, I wish I could tell some of those stories. I can't. But man, there's really good ones when the boys would bring when they got to high school or college and they would bring their girlfriends by. It was just a highlight of my night watching Michael try to interact with them and their girlfriends. I'll just leave it at that. There was nothing better.
Oh man. Well, we want to make sure we save time for some music stuff before we're done here.
What leads you to think I should be talking about music? Is there something that would lead you to think that?
I will say this: like when we do I read this is remembered from either a tweet or debate. I started something, but like one of the songs that we're now singing, I sing to my daughter, my 2-year-old, as she goes to sleep, is "Friday I'm in Love." Like she loves The Cure. I was like,
that's cool.
Feels like something.
It's funny. I thought you were going to say, speaking to my history in the music business. I wish that story would have ended with, one of the songs I sing to my daughter when she goes to bed is Papa Roach "Last Resort." And one of the scourges that I have unleashed upon alt rock society.
No, it's not quite that bad.
But we were going to actually at some point we
can do it now if you want.
Yeah, the KRock culture was something that when I moved out here in 1990 was like nothing I'd ever seen before in terms of like a radio station creating culture. There were popular stations in St. Louis, like hugely popular, but like I'd never seen anything like the idea that like that station was national tastemakers in ways that I'd never seen anything. Forget just locally, where it just really ruled everything in Southern California. Like it was a year or so ahead of everything you knew was eventually going to become massive or influential, or in some way would matter. I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah, the funny thing is the moniker, the world famous KRock, was a punchline. It was a joke, when they had first gotten started in the late 70s in a house, literally a house in Pasadena is where the station started, and they called themselves the world famous KRock because it was just this mom and pop operation that was trying to compete with some heavyweights, and it turned out to be the world famous KRock. A lot of it coming thanks to Rodney Bingenheimer, who was basically the mayor of the Sunset Strip and close friends with a lot of these bands that were up and coming. The thing about Rodney was it was the rule of many, right? He befriended everyone, and so certainly when you wrap your arms around the entire Sunset Strip music scene, a few of those are going to pop. So, when it's Van Halen and you're the first one that plays them, it's a pretty freaking cool story. But, of course, Rodney was brilliant and did have a great ear for music. So that's kind of where it started is, with that original cast. And then when I came in, and what you're talking to, Andy, is when Kevin Weatherly, who's, a name not a lot of people know, but he was the program director. He actually came up from San Diego. Was running a top 40 station down there, Q106, and they decided, I think that might work. Let's see if we can make top 40 work in rock and what we do, and whether or not we can kind of grow this and sell it to the masses as opposed to just being the super cool station that plays The Cure and Depeche Mode and New Order and things like that. And he happened to be timed up perfectly with the grunge movement, and he showed up at KRock, and a couple months later, Nirvana Nevermind comes out, and KLOS decides, which was the big rock station in town, that they weren't sure if that was their sound. Does Nirvana fit next to Rush and Foghat? And it was enough of a...
what really does fit next to Foghat?
Yes, exactly.
I can't imagine spending my days professionally trying to figure out what fits next to Foghat. That doesn't sound fulfilling to me.
I'll tell you what fits next to it. Allie Haynes and Jeremiah, LSD, that's what fits next to it. So that was that window, right? And they became the Nirvana station, and then the Pearl Jam station, and the Soundgarden station, and it just exploded from there. And that's who I had kind of worked under and learned under in terms of finding music and programming music. And it was just you had all these artists that, whether they were kind of foundation artists like those three, the grunge, the big four of the grunge, the Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, or you still had heritage where we were still playing all of the Depeche Modes, New Orders, Cures, but then you also had all this like cool KRock music that, you know, the Dramarama Anythings, the Nelly the Elephants, the Detachable Penis by King Missile, like those were KRock songs. They weren't national hits. And I think that was, you know, Kevin used to call it the special sauce. He's like, I mean, the difference between us and everyone else is we've got this catalog of just special sauce that were huge, you know, Berlin Metro, things like that, you know, Sex, and like all of those, Romeo Void, I Might Like You Better If We Slept Together. All those songs is what separated that station from, like you said, where you grew up, you know, because when I was doing records as opposed to radio, you know, I would travel the country, and basically my job was to get records played on the KRocks of the world. So like the Point in St. Louis is probably one of my least favorite stations because the guy that ran it was a complete a-hole.
Which station? Do you remember?
It was called The Point. I think it was 103.5 The Point in St. Louis.
The names, I mean, honestly, the only radio station I can remember in St. Louis is KG95.
And Magic 108.
Oh, right, Magic 108.
So my guess is The Point probably came up, you know, after you had left in like the mid 90s because of the explosion of grunge and alternative rock. But yeah, there were very few. There were, you know, look, there were other great stations. 93 XRT in Chicago, 107.7 The End in Seattle, Live 105 in San Francisco, HFS in DC. Like, you know, we had great stations across the country, but there's very, very little like KRock.
Is that era that you're describing though, you know, when that explosion of grunge, you know, sort of the height, you know, I kind of think of it too as like the last big moment for MTV. Is that the end of that type of radio? Was there anything that came afterwards?
Well, I think, you know, maybe hip hop, you know, I think hip hop radio kind of, you know, that became what you weren't just doing, you know, like what they called it back then was you had crossover, you had R&B, you actually got hip hop stations that only played hip hop. And I think that was just after, you know, I think those stations really started popping up in the late 90s, early 2000s. But in terms of, gosh, it's so different, you know, it's so different now because, you know, you don't have to go there for it. You can go wherever you want. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Spotify, like you can find any song anytime. Whereas, you know, back then, you know, we had to give it to you because we were getting it from the record companies, or we were getting it from bands or managers or booking agents would flip you something, you know, like obviously the one that everybody always brings up with me is Sublime. And, you know, Sublime was a local band in Long Beach. And, you know, I was at Pepperdine at the time. And, you know, I started working at KRock when I was still in college. And I just had a buddy who turned me on to 40 Ounces to Freedom. And I brought it in. I was like, hey, have you guys heard this? And one of the guys I worked with in the music department, Zeke's like, oh yeah, dude, I love that record. And we just walked it into the music meeting. It was like a record that was 2 years old. And that was one of the great things about KRock is they would play stuff like that. Like they didn't care. It was just like, yeah, dude, let's play Date Rape. And even though they've put out Robin in the Hood and that song is 2 or 3 years old, we're just going to play it because we think people have not heard it yet. They did the same thing with Fugazi Waiting Room. It was like 4 years old when they played it.
That actually happened with Guns N' Roses, with Appetite for Destruction. Like that album had been out for a while before it eventually broke out. I mean, I think it had something to do with being in Lean on Me, that Morgan Freeman movie. But it's weird. Like occasionally things like that'll happen. But like what was striking to me with something with KRock when I first moved out here in 90 was there were bands that they were playing that I had heard before. I had never heard them played on radio before. Like I'd always had to like go find them in a record store or be some type of word of mouth thing. The idea of you know, stuff at the time, you know, college rock, you know, was called, eventually became alternative. Like the idea of it being on a station with an actual signal, that's what was really unique to me.
And you caught the tail end of it, you know, because after that, it really changed. You know, when I was music director there, I like to think I did a pretty good job of trying to keep that spirit alive, but it had changed so much. It had become, you know, the year I was there, it was the highest billing station in the history of the country. They had ended up, or in the history of Los Angeles, I think we billed like $49 million or something like that. So you couldn't do what they did way back in the day, right? It was just too big of
all of that for a Sublime album.
Yeah, exactly. So. back then you could play stuff that no one else would, but it kind of got away from that. But you had those little, like, here's a perfect example, the Shins. I loved the Shins. They were my favorite band. I could never, get that record played. It just wouldn't, they weren't having it. And then Garden State comes out, and it's like, well, you know what? We can play New Slang. It's a bummer because Shoots Two Narrows out, and that's an awesome record. But all right, this is a terrible parallel, but I think it might work. It's kind of just like, compromise in politics, right? You try to come up with a bill that's good because you can't get great. So it was like, well, if this is the only way we're going to get the Shins played, then I'm going to go ahead and support this Garden State soundtrack and New Slang, which is 2 years old, instead of, Kissing the Lipless or something. And the band's going to be pissed, but hey, at least we're playing the Shins on KRock.
Sector Cruz is asking, speaking of KRock, are those records behind money from his producer days?
These are from my, and I rotate them because for whatever reason, it's funny, of all the people,
so much success that I need to move in.
Tom Telesco, the GM of the Chargers, when he was watching me on, because the people at NFL Network were like, hey, can you put some stuff behind you? And, everybody makes their fancy little, oh, there we go, there's that. And then there's like,
we've done 85 shows. I'm not kidding. And
exactly.
I managed to,
you have blinds.
I got blinds.
So this is, what do I have behind me now? These are both from when I worked at DreamWorks. So this is the Jimmy Eat World Bleed American, which actually had to be changed because Bleed American came out right before 9/11. So it ended up getting changed to Jimmy Eat World, Jimmy Eat World. But for our sake, for the platinum record, we still kept the Bleed American on there. And then that's Nelly Furtado, double platinum. So Nelly was originally an alt artist when we got her. When she came in, I was like, dude, this record's great. We can totally work this at alt. And the first station that ever played Nelly Furtado, believe it or not, was an alternative rock station in Detroit. 89X, CIMX in Detroit played Nelly. It was the first radio station to ever play Nelly. So yeah, that's what that is there. So I'm kind of cool, but not cool.
Travis Tango asks, I always wonder if you'll change your background, Brian. I think you're proud of it. It's not so much that I'm proud. I'm exceedingly lazy, but also because of the space that I do the show from, anything I put up, my wife is going to ask me to take down during the day. And so I'm not doing this every day where I put up a background and then take the background down. Well, I'm not doing that.
The funny thing is like, I thought this was going to be, up for 3 weeks. It's like, whatever, I'll have some fun with it. I haven't, like, these things don't hang in my house. They've all just been stacked. And look, I had, a 10-year career in the music business. So when you work that long, when you're the music director at like, these are just from my record days. Like when you're the music director at KRock, people are flipping you gold and platinum records all the time. And it's just like, whatever. I remember I gave my Hoobastank one to Jay and Dan from Fox because they used to make it's still my favorite sports show of all time. Their little show that they did on FS1 in that closet was the greatest thing that the sports world has ever known. And they used to make a joke about Hoobastank all the time. Like they would show like a highlight and it sucked, and they'd say something along the lines of, that's the kind of highlight that the Hoobastank guys would be into. And so one day I run into Jay and I'm like, I think it was Dan. It was Dan's, anyway, somebody, I was like, hey, can you give them this? And the person looked at me like, I know what it was. It was our makeup person at NFL Network, also did makeup at Fox Sports. And so she was like, oh yeah, Jay and Dan love you and Petros. They'd listen to the show all the time. And I was like, oh, right on. Next day I bring her my Hoobastank quadruple platinum record. And I'm like, can you give this to them and they'll know what to do with it. Just tell them to put it in the studio. And they lost their minds. They're like, who would ever give away a quadruple platinum Hoobastank record? I was like, a guy who would never put up a quadruple platinum Hoobastank record in his house. That's who.
I find it shocking that they had a quadruple platinum album like that. That's
the reason, man. The reason was a monster. That was a Billboard Hot 100 #1. The reason was, and it's funny. I remember we had the debate there. Like we had this debate a couple times, and it was just so stupid, whether or not we would play the song or not. I mean, so Hootie and the Blowfish, we did not play. Creed, My Own Prison, we did not play.
Good call so far.
Yeah, but so here's what I'm getting at. Goo Goo Dolls' Name, first station in America to play it. makes no sense, right? It's like it's the same, just kind of gooey, pop, alt rock top 40 style ballad. Hoobastank the Reason, played that. Nickelback did not play. Like it was weird what we decided we were gonna and what we weren't gonna play.
Those, by the way, you want to talk about, I mean, maybe you've met them. I've never met them. I have no idea what they're like, who they are. Those poor guys have become just the most automatic punchline.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I make fun of them and I don't even know their music well enough to know if they deserve it. Like I've just jumped on this thing.
Nice guys. They were Derek, I think is the lead singer's name. Super nice guy. Feel bad, but hey, whatever, man. They had a quadruple platinum album. They wrote a song and it was a big hit. So just be thankful and recognize. You're probably like, look, the Eve 6 Twitter feed is a perfect example of how to roll with it, right? And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's freaking brilliant. The front, you have to check it out. It's awesome. Basically, what he does is he lobs out the same question to every celebrity on Earth. Hey, what do you think of the Heart in a Blender song? It's brilliant. Like he doesn't take himself too seriously. And so I think you recognize, look, that was my place in the world of music. Unfortunately, we have one of the most asinine band names ever, and we're known for one of the most, one of the biggest and one of the most hated songs ever put on alternative rock radio.
The whole concept of the one-hit wonder is a weird one because it's really hard to get a hit. Like,
yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, like, I remember when I was, first starting out, in the music department at KRock, and actually ultimately when I became the music director, I would be like, man, this is like I was the guy that was. And that's what your job is music director versus program director. You're the one that's supposed to bring in everything and throw it against the wall. And then the program director can figure out, okay, what's going to stick, but you better not miss anything. That's your job, is to make sure you don't miss anything. But I can remember just screaming and yelling about, Modest Mouse and Franz Ferdinand and all of that when that was starting to happen, and all these different bands I want to play, and Drive-By Truckers. We should be playing this, but it's like country. Yeah, but it's cool country. And I can remember Kevin saying, hey man, it's really, really easy to be cool. It is really hard to be popular. And I think that's kind of where the one-hit wonder comes from, is it's really hard to write a hit, a song that people will hear and be able to take away 7 or 8 seconds from. And because that's all the hook, the hook. And that's how you get your one-hit wonders. That's how you get Heart in a Blender.
What's the difference between cool and popular?
Well, I think there's just a lot of great records that, like I love the Grateful Dead. They're probably my favorite band, but I get it. I get why it doesn't work for a lot of people, why it just sounds,
look, I've seen a bunch of shows. I even get up during drum space. It's
one of my favorite. Now, granted, it's when I'm peaking, so that's why I'm usually so.
Well, drums I love. Space is where I kind of tune out.
Kind of depends, am I having microdots? Am I having window paint? Where am I? What are we doing here? And whether or not I'm into space. So I think that's, but I think it's a great point, Brian, because, and that was what I would always push back with is, well, it'll be popular if we play it because we're KRock, and that was kind of the power that you managed to wield, and I was never quite comfortable with it. Wow, and it was no different than when I was with the record label, when I was working at there's this band before I got to DreamWorks. I worked at a label called London and Slash, and actually we just lost Bob Biggs, who founded Slash, who was just the coolest guy ever, man. And we had this band on Slash called Imperial Teen, and it was a brilliant record. I mean, freaking brilliant. And we had this other record, this band Lincoln, both awesome. It just didn't hit. It didn't make sense. They wrote hits. They were great songs, but for whatever reason, the radio stations just decided they weren't going to play them. And then you would get these weird, these kind of weird, like Papa Roach, right? Last Resort, it was teetering. Like it almost didn't go. Well, first of all, the band didn't want us to lead with that single. They wanted some other single, and I was like, well, tough shit. I don't care what you think. This is the song we're going with. But like it was out there for about 8 weeks, and most people are like, oh, we're just kind of over the whole rap rock thing. We've been through it. We've already had enough of it. And I'm like, I don't care how much you've had. The song's a hit. And sure enough, it was our first week of sales, and we ended up selling for a band named Papa Roach that no one ever heard of before. We ended up selling like 35,000 copies of the record in the first week, and all the radio stations were like, "Holy crap!" And that's how it became a #1 song. So it's just, you know, I think what I'm getting at is, to your point, is who decides what's popular versus what's cool. You know, Papa Roach was not cool. It was popular, but it was almost not popular.
Okay, you had said before that it's really hard to become popular as a band, like to come up with a song that is popular. From your perspective, how hard is it to actually predict what will be popular beyond just the reach KRock had?
Well, you know, I think that's kind of a two-way street, right? Because if you play something enough, you basically, like, I was never a big Incubus guy, and I thought half the songs we played by Incubus were just crap. You know, I just but we played them 10,000 times, and eventually you find yourself singing "Goodbye, Nice to Know You," and it's like, this song is terrible, but I've heard it so much that I guess it's, you know. So I think there's a way to make something popular. You know, like there's a way to do that. You just play the hell out of it, and you convince people that, and that's what was kind of funny, right? Is if you had a soft spot for something, you would do that. You would get back research. It wouldn't be selling, and you would just keep playing it because I'm convinced. So yeah, I mean, there were records that I was totally convinced were going to be freaking huge, and ones that I was convinced were going to just absolutely bomb. It's no different than sports scouting, right? You talk to scouts, and now it's become, you know, there's so many internet scouts out there now that think you're supposed to know exactly how every giant superstar is going to play when they're in college, and you can't possibly know.
Yep.
I think it's very similar for music. You know,
I gave up trying to be that guy after Marcus Pfizer washed out of the league. He was the last player that I was like, oh yeah,
no brainer.
That guy's gonna be a dominant player, dominant player in the league. And I quit after that because he sucked.
100%. And that's, I think, how, to some degree, that's how music is. You know, you think you know, and it's just weird. It's so, you know, who knows what the hell a capricious listening audience is going to decide they like, and spend $14.95 in a jewel box and buy the CD back in the day. You know, but
that it's a great seg, because, like, for me, there are a lot of reasons this has happened to me. I'm 45 now. I am basically an old person. 3 kids, 29 jobs, whatever. And I just
weren't that cool in your heyday.
Never was. And to some degree don't have sort of the bandwidth to just consume a lot of new music. It's never been, never been quite the high enough priority for me. But the other thing is, like, the way music is consumed now is so different than when it was when I was in high school, when I was in college, when I first got out and was really still following along with stuff, that I'm not good at it. I'm not good at finding the things that I would like.
That's funny, because it's easier than ever because of the algorithm, right? If you have Pandora and you just punch in the one song you like, then all of a sudden they start putting that algorithm together, and you either thumbs up or thumbs down it, and they can create. It's like, for me,
and I get the AI and all that behind it, but it's some of it's the process. Some of it is, like, like you say, you know, if you're used to going out and thumbing through the jewel boxes and doing all that kind of stuff, the experience of albums and artists and all that stuff is so different now.
Yeah. What's song?
So what makes you talk a lot about what made something pop in 95, 96, 2002, whatever it is. What makes things pop now? What is different
I think
about
we're just so much more of a song culture, and that it gradually made that move, right? Because we, like you said, when we went out to discover, you had to buy an album. So you really had to commit, and you would listen to that album because you spent your $9 on the cassette or $15 on the CD. You weren't just clicking, your Spotify link and going through.
Plus, like, back in the days of cassettes or albums, fast forwarding was a bitch.
Exactly.
Rewinding
was just the list. Yeah, especially if you had a shitty car stereo that had the fast forward eject on one.
The technology where it would stop over and the next song was fun. Like, you had that, you were golden.
You could spend your $14.95, like you said, and a little bit too much rewinding. Like, in the first hour, you could end up ruining your cassette. The thing, it could snap.
The funny thing is, it's so true. And remember, you would invest the $2.99 in a single if you really, if you weren't sure.
That word.
I don't know if this Nana Cherry is going to break, but I'm going to get this Buffalo man. Buffalo
the ultimate in singles for me, like the just true. I don't even know if they had an album. Do you remember that? I don't remember what they were called, but they did this mashup. It was, I think, the first mashup I'd ever heard of Freebird and Baby I Love Your Way. Will to Power is, I think,
terrible. I do remember it. It's terrible.
Awful. That was, I believe, my first experience with a single, just something that was, I think, popular, and I put in as like, what the hell?
I think I really did have Nana Cherry's Buffalo Stance. I think I had that on single. What else did I have on single? I think I had Pet Shop Boys, It's a Sin on single. But we used to like I was a big, clearly, I mean, I got into the music business. I was a big fan of music. So I used to go to shows and, I would want to get there early. I wasn't the guy that the person that wanted to just show up for the headliner. I was there for all three openers who's good enough to get on this bill that the, whatever, take your pick, that so-and-so Bad Braids decided to have these three bands in front of them. I'm going to go see them. And that's, how I would get to, like, I remember,
that's the Spotify algorithm of the day, is whoever your band thinks is good is who. Yeah.
And so you would go and watch, like I saw Dave Grohl drumming for Scream back when he was the drummer for Scream in '89 when they came through. I think they opened up for My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult. And I just remember being in the audience, and there were maybe 15 of us there. I think that's who they opened for. It was at this place called Dreamers. And just getting that was my, and I was way into it. I was like, dude, this band Scream's pretty rad. And, that's how you would find stuff. And now it's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's better or worse, because it's so easy to find every freaking genre and all the popular music. And now you have all this back catalog you can just tap into, like, like you said, the Freebird, Baby I Love Your Way mashup. Like, you hear the sample of Supertramp, and you can go back from Gym Class Heroes or whatever the hell the name of the band is, and you go back and listen to Take a Look at My Girlfriend. Now you're listening to Supertramp, and you go down this hole, right? That's hours long.
There is nothing, by the way, now that makes me feel older than current music, because like there's nothing though that will expose how little I know. Like when the insurrection was going on at the Capitol, and there was that story that came out that Ariel Pink was there, and I guess caught up in this. My immediate reaction wasn't like, oh my God, how does somebody do something like that? I hope they arrest him. I
don't know what that is.
Ariel Pink. Like,
what is that?
I just had the same reaction. I don't know who Ariel Pink is. We're all there.
Or like when James Harden was with Lil Baby, I'm like, I don't know
idea
or what that is. Or Jack Harlow with Lou Williams. I'm like, I don't know what.
Yeah. I've told this story a million times. When I looked at the billboard, I looked at the billboard and asked my wife, "Who's Florida?" She was deeply ashamed. Deeply ashamed of that. I walk around. I am Marge Simpson.
Not a band.
Yeah, I am Marge Simpson. Music is none of my business. That is basically where I am in my life.
Yeah, it's popular music is. I've told this. When I get asked, I think a lot of people are interested, because it is kind of. I think it's interesting to kind of hear how the sausage is made in the world of radio and music and stuff. I've always found it fascinating, but I regularly have this same answer, and I think at least it was my story, and I think it holds. Is I said, we can sit here and bitch about how our music was so much better than theirs, and when I was growing up, and Minor Threat and Naked Raygun and Bad Brains and all these great punk rock bands, like that was real, unbridled. F you to the man youth, and it's like, well, yeah, because I was youth and they were the man, and that's what I was listening to. It's no different now. It's just now it's like you said, it's Ariel Pink and Lil Baby and all that.
I don't know if it's better. Music today could be light years better than the shit I listened to when I don't know, because
you're right, because I think it speaks to you, right? Like when you were young, it was whatever spoke to you, that and you never listened to what your parents listened to. You wanted to listen to something that they weren't into, and they're like, hey, what is that you're listening to? F. Martinez. It's like, yeah, it's the Two Live Crew, Mom. It's Luke Skywalker. What is that? What is he saying again? Martinez. Oh, okay.
I mean, I have to think, Andy, there was some sort of that was part of your attitude when you used to play, Beastie Boys, License to Ill on volume 73 all day long.
our parents had the most visceral, unpleasant reaction to that album. And like, I used to play a lot of like hardcore punk, like X, Dead Kennedys. Like I had a pretty, for like a, I don't know, like 7th, 8th grade or whatever year that was, a pretty wide taste in music. I played a lot of stuff that parents
did a lot of heroin.
Yes, I was also starting early. I think it's good to just get it out of the way.
Look at those veins.
Exactly. Like 13, 14, you get a little taste, and then you move on. Exactly. It's my understanding it's not a very addictive drug.
No, not at all.
But for whatever reason, License to Ill rubbed them so wrong way. They were just like, they'd come into a room and be like, I'm begging you, like put X back on. Like, put the circle jerks back on. I'm begging you.
That's so funny. Yeah, I feel like I have that, and I try not to do it. You know, with my daughters, I try desperately not to do it, but it's just the same. I feel like it's the same song, and they all say, and like it's exactly what our parents said. No, in this one, Dad, what the Dead Kennedys are doing is they're telling Nazi punks to fuck off, and it's okay. This is much different than Wild in the Streets by the Circle Jerks. It's much different. To them, it's all the same.
This, 2020, you mentioned you're setting up. You didn't think you'd be doing your stuff from that home studio for a year. I have, the kids are at home. They're doing their school from home. So every day I have a Zoom call, this, whatever it is. I have to find whatever room isn't occupied. Half the time it's my kids' room, the boys' room. And the place that I can plug in my computer most conveniently, and there's a little tiny desk and whatever, and behind me is their Imagine Dragons poster.
Oh no!
And every time I have to sit there and start a Zoom call, I like try to position my head exactly in the middle of the Imagine Dragons poster, so those people on the Zoom call don't think I'm a big Imagine Dragons fan.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
But my kids love them. Like, I'm not going to convince my kids that isn't a good band. I mean, then I don't try.
It's fine. Whatever. 100%. Let them learn. Let them discover and learn on their own.
I consider it one of my big accomplishments in parenting, and time will tell how many I actually had. Because she's only 9. We'll see in 9 more years how this is looking. My daughter likes Prince.
It's great.
She likes Prince and she likes Johnny Cash. I've managed to get those two things in organically. Everything else from here is probably going to be downhill, but I'm always going to be able to look at that. And she knows some Prince deep cuts, like some genuine deep cuts that a lot of Prince fans probably don't know. That has made me very, very proud.
Her favorite song is Darling Nikki. Loves it.
Oh my God. I remember
before bed every night.
The first time I heard that song, I was like, because with Purple Rain, I love that album and all that. I distinctly remember thinking to myself, I don't know what this is, but I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah. I'm with you. I can see the album, the vinyl, and listening to it and being like, ooh.
Before Computer Blue with the Wendy, yes, Lisa, is the water warm enough? I'm like,
exactly.
Wait, I don't exactly know what's going on because I'm 12, but it sounds like there's something particularly risky.
Go on.
Maybe even
is the water warm enough? I would like to know.
Why would Wendy necessarily care about Lisa's bathwater? I'm just not quite.
Is this, by the way, I saw this the other. My wife showed this to me the other day. She managed to see it. Now, is this an appropriate honorary for Prince to have on your front door?
Yes, I think I would be all for that. I'd feel good about that. I do. By the way, I love the purple sandals next to it. You can see next to the
right.
there.
Yeah, that's good.
That is someone who I imagine you go in and there's a lot more Prince there, considering those sandals.
Okay, we were talking about, before what's cool, what isn't cool. Like the moment I'd always known Prince is cool, even though he's sort of low key, kind of a weird geek, but he's also incredibly cool. But the moment where I think I really realized this, even after being, a fan of his since I was like 8 or 9, was seeing him at the Forum. He was basically performing in something that one of the Golden Girls would have worn.
Yes.
It was like a
wow.
It was like a blousy pajamas and legit high heels, and he looks like the coolest person on the planet doing this.
Yeah, it's Prince, and it's funny, like Prince was even like it's I don't know, and I think it just kind of speaks to being a kid, right? It just wasn't cool enough for me for too long, and then you kind of mature, and you're like, wait a minute, this is really good music. And I think that's kind of one, like going back to the, you know, what we were talking about earlier, right? What's the difference between cool and popular, and when can you merge the two? Like, it's something when you can really merge it. And that's something that, you know, Prince was, I mean, really, really popular and still really, really cool.
Really quick before we let you go, there's a great story in Trouble Boys. There is amazing biography about the Replacements. And they were a Minneapolis band, you know, Prince is a Minneapolis musician. And Paul Westerberg told this story about how he and this musician that he was friends with, he didn't even say who it was, but he described this guy as pretty arrogant, like really thought he was just hot shit. And they were at this Prince concert and they were watching him just do his sound check. And his friend looks over at Paul Westerberg and says, I'm fucking embarrassed to be alive right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how incredible Prince was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else we got. If we're doing Minneapolis, you know, Paul Westerberg, you got Soul Asylum, Dave Pernier, you got Prince.
Husker Du.
Exactly, Husker Du. Yeah, there's not a lot there. I mean, to have Prince,
Morris Day.
Right. You know, Morris Day in the time. Shoot, I'm sure. Oh, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
That turns out that's a pretty big one. That's a pretty big one.
I'm familiar with his work.
Yes, but pretty awesome freaking scene. I love the Replacements.
Oh, yeah. If you've never read that book, read it. It's
I will. I'm not. I absolutely will.
It's amazing.
Matt Money Smith.
Hope that was all right.
No, this is ideal. And we won't keep you past. You know, you're a surfer these days. We got to get you out.
I am, and I by the way had to take a nap before this. To be full disclosure, I was watching the Kings game, and I was laying on my bed, and I was like, you know what, I better set an alarm because we didn't go on. Petros and Money was not on until 5 p.m. today, following the Bruins game. So I did a double session. I did 2 hours in the morning, and then I did another 2 hours at 11:30, and I was applied. And so I alarm.
I have overslept for my own show, so I would have understood.
We appreciate it, man.
A ton of fun. We really appreciate you taking the time. This is great.
You got it, man. That was fun. Fun reliving some of our old hanging out with AB in the Chick Hearn media room days, and laughing at Joel Myers and how much he hates everybody. You know, he tried to get me fired, right? I'll just bookend it with that. He tried to. He went to Tim Harris and told him he should fire me.
That's
you can't
very collegial.
Can't have a guy go out on the radio making fun of your play-by-play voice. You can't have that. You can't have it. Why not? Why not, Joel? They're just kind of screwing with you. Yeah, I don't smoke, buddy. You know, I heard you talking about me on the air the other day, saying something about me smoking. It's like, Joel, you bummed a cigarette off me in Phoenix. That didn't count. That didn't count. I was drunk.
All right, man. This is awesome. We looking forward to the day where we can actually see you in person again.
By the way, you know I don't drink, right? Well, yeah, you just told me you're yeah, that was wine. It doesn't count. These are actual conversations. They're actual conversations, by the way. I don't drink. Well, you put down like 2 bottles of wine. I don't count wine. Well, that's good to know. I'll let my dad know. He's an alcoholic. He's been sober for 40 years. I'm sure he'll love to know he can start drinking wine again.
Let me tell you who might beg to differ: the police officer that pulls you over.
Exactly. Let me bum a cigarette. Joe, I don't smoke. Wait a minute. Something's not connecting here. Sorry. All right. Let's go. We're out of here.
Matt, thank you very much, man. We appreciate
tomorrow
it.
night. Who's on tomorrow, Andy?
Ariel Sewell.
Yeah, we'll get back to the Lakers post Lonzo and the Pelicans in town.
Well, Zion and the Pelicans. Lonzo's out.
Well, one of those guys will play. I'll do my prep before the show. Well, I'll figure it out.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
All right. See everybody tomorrow. Donkey Milan.